A day as a detective's assistant. Jared had always been intrigued by mysteries. The thrill of chasing clues, connecting the dots, and unveiling the truth behind closed doors was something he found exhilarating. When he got the opportunity to intern as a detective's assistant for a day, he couldn't believe his luck. Detective Lewis was the town's most renowned investigator. He had solved countless cases, from burglaries to intricate conspiracies. With his sharp eyes, keen instincts, and unparalleled experience, he was the epitome of a detective. And today, Jared was to be his right-hand man. They started their day early, meeting at the detective's quaint office. Walls lined with books, newspaper clippings, and several awards gave an immediate aura of seriousness. First rule, began Detective Lewis, always trust your gut. It's often right. Their first assignment was to track down a missing cat for Mrs. Green, a sweet elderly lady. Not the high-stakes drama Jared had expected, but he was eager nonetheless. Detective Lewis approached the case with the same diligence he would for a major crime. They interviewed neighbors, inspected the garden, and eventually found the cat trapped in a nearby shed. Mrs. Green's gratitude was heartfelt. It's not about the size of the case, Lewis explained, but the impact you make. Just as they were about to break for lunch, an urgent call came in. A local jeweler's shop had been broken into, and a priceless necklace was stolen. Without hesitation, the detective and his assistant were on the scene. The shop was in chaos. Glass shards from the broken display cases littered the floor. The owner, Mr. Patel, was visibly distressed. Detective Lewis quickly took charge, asking Jared to interview the witnesses while he inspected the crime scene. Jared approached a woman who had been in the shop during the break-in. She described a tall man in a dark coat, who had fled the scene just moments before the police arrived. Another witness mentioned seeing a suspicious van parked nearby. Pooling their findings, Jared and Detective Lewis deduced that the thief had planned this heist carefully. The van was likely their getaway vehicle. They decided to review nearby security footage, which captured the van's license plate. Using the license plate number, they tracked down the van to a warehouse on the outskirts of town. Inside, they found the stolen necklace and apprehended the thief, who had been trying to sell it on the black market. As the day came to a close, Jared reflected on his experiences. He had learned that detective work was not just about dramatic chases and confrontations. It required patience, attention to detail, and a deep commitment to justice. Detective Lewis, sensing Jared's contemplative mood, remarked, "Every case is a puzzle, waiting to be solved. Remember, it's not just about catching the bad guys, it's about restoring balance and giving people peace of mind." Exhausted but fulfilled, Jared realized that this was more than just a day's work. It was a glimpse into a career that could make a genuine difference in people's lives. He left the office that evening, not as a mere intern, but as someone inspired to pursue a future in detective work. The magic behind Grandpa's old clock. In a sunlit corner of the living room, the old clock stood tall and proud. Generations had watched its pendulum swing, its hands marking the passage of hours, days, and years. To Elsie, it was just a piece of family history, until one ordinary Sunday afternoon. It was a family tradition to gather at Grandpa Joe's house every week. Elsie would listen to tales of her ancestors, play with her cousins, and savor Grandma's freshly baked cookies. But on this particular Sunday, Grandpa Joe seemed different, distant almost, as if lost in deep thought. Elsie approached him, her curiosity getting the better of her. "Grandpa, are you okay?" Grandpa Joe looked at her and smiled, his eyes reflecting a mix of nostalgia and mischief. "I was just thinking about this old clock," he replied, pointing to the tall wooden timepiece. "Did I ever tell you about its magic?" Elsie laughed. "Magic? Grandpa, clocks don't have magic." With a wink, Grandpa Joe leaned closer and whispered, "This one does. Every tick and tock holds a secret. But you have to believe to see it." Intrigued, Elsie asked, "What kind of magic?" Taking a deep breath, Grandpa Joe began his tale. "When I was about your age, I discovered that this clock was no ordinary timepiece. One night, as everyone slept, I heard it chime, not the usual hourly tone, but a melody I'd never heard before. Drawn to it, I placed my hand on its surface and found myself transported to a different time." Elsie's eyes widened. "You time-traveled?" Grandpa nodded. "It took me back to a day when your great-great-grandfather was just a boy. I saw him playing in the fields, climbing trees, and even sharing a secret with a childhood friend. It was a glimpse of our family's past, one that was never documented or spoken about." Elsie, now fully captivated, urged him to continue. "Every so often," Grandpa Joe continued, "when the clock felt my longing or curiosity about our lineage, it would show me another moment. But it wasn't just about seeing. I could feel the emotions of that time, the joy, the sorrows, the hopes." "But how does it work?" Elsie inquired. Grandpa Joe shook his head. "I've never understood the mechanics behind it. All I know is that this clock has the power to connect generations, to let us relive moments that shaped our family's story." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the revelation settling in. "Do you think it would show me something if I touched it?" Elsie asked hesitantly. Grandpa Joe smiled. "There's only one way to find out." Elsie took a step toward the clock, her heart racing. Gently placing her hand on its polished surface, she closed her eyes. The room went silent, the tick-tock of the clock the only sound. And then, just as quickly as the moment began, Elsie was back, her hand still on the clock, but with memories of a past she had never lived. She turned to her grandpa, her eyes shining with tears. "I saw them, Grandpa. Our ancestors. Their laughter, their struggles. It was beautiful." Grandpa Joe hugged her close. "That's the magic of this clock. It reminds us that while time moves forward, our roots and memories remain forever entwined." And so, the legacy of the magical clock lived on, a bridge between the past and the present, ensuring that the tales of old were never truly forgotten.